Hello everybody, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the weekend wow. This time around I'm actually showcasing the Honeybee. I love the Honeybee stamp. I love the size of the stamps. This is actually the packaging. If I bring in the stamp then we can see the size of the stamps a little bit better. So if I turn that round you can see the size of the stamps a little bit better. We've got the beehive, which is a really good size. Nice background stamp, which is a really good size as well. And it's got those wordings in there as well. Fly, bee, pollen. It's got some different elements in there. And the bee, the honeybee, I absolutely love. It's a really good size. And then you've got a flower as well. And then this flower sentiment here would look fantastic enamelled, but that would go with any of my stamp sets that you've bought previously as well. So we're going to use the bee stamp, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin, let's just move all this packaging out the way, with a circular piece, because I want to create a circular canvas piece that I can add to a circular canvas afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score at 1 inch intervals. So I'm going to score down my, hopefully you can see this if I move that up a little bit. So I've just done the 7 inch mark. I'm just going down at 1 inch intervals. Just going down my card at 1 inch intervals. Firm pressure, just so that we can make sure that we've got a good score line. I'm using a 300 GSM cardstock. So I've got a good sturdy cardstock that can take a lot of battering, as I call it. So that's perfect. So it's up to you whether you score at 1 inch intervals or you score at ½ inch intervals, whichever you prefer. But for this one I'm scoring at 1 inch intervals, and then I'm just going to redefine those score lines. So I'm just going around, redefine the score lines, just so that we've got some nice creases, like so, all the way along the cardstock. And because I'm using that good sturdy cardstock, it means that it can take quite a bit of work and manipulation. So just plunk that out of the way. So now that we've got our cardstock, I've got all the bits from my craft sheet, all from the previous demonstration. So what I'm using now is I'm using my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. So you could use your Vintage Photo Just Distress ink. It doesn't have to be oxide, it can be any of them. And then just move this out the way a little bit, like so. We can then apply the Distress Oxide across the background, and it will pick up the raised areas of those crease lines. So it gives it sort of a lovely panel effect. So if you turn your card round, you will then hit different areas on your cardstock. You can hit different areas. I was going to add a darker colour as well, just to give it a different depth and layer of colour. So keep turning your card around, just so that you get a whole different, you're touching different areas of your card. And what's good with this technique is if you've got some dry ink pads work really well. They work really well. Just use a nice delicate touch. Don't try and press too hard, because then you're going to lose the effect. So don't press too hard with your ink pads. Give it a nice light touch and it works perfectly. Just move your card around, and I think I'm quite happy with that. So and what we can do is we can just distress those edges a little bit. So you can distress the edges with your scissors, just to give it a distressed feel to the edges. Just add a distressed touch to that. Just distresses the edges. Can you tell I can't get my words out at the moment? It distresses the edges a little bit before we add it to a canvas. And then what I'm going to do is just reach over for a piece of cut and dry foam, and then I'm just going to blend a little bit of that colour around the outside edges. And as you can see, I'm lifting the card up because I don't want to blend it over the card. I'm just blending it across the edges so it just gives a little touch. I don't want to detract from that sort of wood panelling effect. So I'm just adding a touch of colour to the edges of the card, just to add to that distressed feel. Also, it gives it a professional touch if you just remember the edges as well. So that's perfect. That's all I need. So what I'm going to use then is I'm going to use the little A7 stamp set that's also in the Weekend Wow. And I love it because you can just add random touches of this if you like. It doesn't have to be the whole stamp. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use it as it is, just as a background element, just a background element to my design, and just adding little touches of the background. You may not pick it up on camera. This is where I get like my little teacher scissors out, but you can see it's got a little detailed effect here, just so that you can see it in the background. And I love the fineness of the lines. The lines are not too over the top because I don't want anything too much over the top with having that wood panelling in the background. I just want some little background elements just to add another layer to my card. That's all I want to do, just add another layer. So just stamping around randomly. And if you've got a nice text stamp, that would work quite well as well. So what we can do now is we can actually shabby it up a little bit. We can shabby the background up a little bit. So what we're going to do now is use a touch of cream paint, and then we're just going to bray some of that paint over the background. And I'm just going to add a light layer. And all it does is it sort of gives it a shabby feel. It adds to the vintage feel, but it gives it a touch of shabby. I really like that. It sort of tones everything down. Quite like that effect. So just reach for a wipe. I'm trying to remember to clean up after myself so that I don't have too much of a mess. Doesn't always work, but I keep trying. And I'm recycling my kitchen roll. So just move that. And then I'm just going to give the background a little dry when we spritz it with water. So I'm just going to plug that in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spritz the background with a little bit of water. Just because that oxide will react with that water, even though we've added that layer of paint as well, it'll still react with the water. Can you see that card just shows you how much moisture you add even when you add a light spritzing of water. So we can then give that a dry, and if you look here you can see that we've got a couple of splatters there, which is quite nice. So if you want, you can splatter again with more water if you want, just to add to the aged feel. Just give that a dry. And because we're adding moisture, where you've stamped, it gets brighter because it reacts with the water. And I love that. I love the fact that we've got a few of those aged pieces in the background. Just turn that over so you can dry it from the other side as well, because that will just straighten your card out a little bit. Just one more bit there. And you just see that you've got a lovely detail in the background, and you've got a little splatter here as well. And what you can do is you can go back to your little A7 stamp, and the little A7 stamp has got some splatters on. So now you can add some of your own splatters to the background with your little A7 stamp, which is perfect because now we've added that moisture and we've got natural splatters with the water. It now fits in perfectly. So we're just adding a splatter from the A7 stamp set. And I'm just using a light colour because I don't want anything to be too overpowering in the background. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use another piece of card while we've got our scoreboard out. And then if we just place this on our scoreboard, see if we can move some stuff out the way just so that you can see what I'm doing, which is usually a benefit. And then I'm just going to add score lines at 1/2 inch intervals. 1/2 inch intervals. So a little bit different this time, 1/2 inch intervals rather than inch like we did before. Sometimes it's nice to make some simple backgrounds with your stamps, and the stamps work so beautifully with so many different techniques. And I just love the fact that in the show today there are so many stamps that work together and that also work with your previous purchases, so they all combine beautifully together. So there we've got that, and then I'm going to just age that a little bit more like we did with the circular piece. Just age that a little bit, just add a few distressed edges to the card. Let's add a few little tears as well, just to give it that aged feel. Just add a few tears. One part of it will be covered up, so it won't matter too much. And then what we're going to do is apply the same technique that you did before for this background piece. Just add some background detail with your ink pad. Just apply that ink and keep moving your ink pad round just so that you hit different areas. Okay, and then again spritz that with water just so that you can add a few splatters and it just adds to that aged feel. And then I'm just going to reach for the background stamp. That's this stamp here that we've got in the Honeybee. Lovely background stamp. I love that stamp. Just give this a dry. And I love how the Oxide really catches the scored lines. I love how it catches that. I keep losing my kitchen roll. I keep chucking it over there and then losing my kitchen roll. I'm good like that. So just give that a dry. And then what you want to do is just crease it a little bit. Just add a few creases. Just add a few creases so it looks a bit more aged, so it doesn't look as perfect. So just add a few more creases and then go over again with your Distress Oxide, just so that it adds to that aged feel. And highlight those creases with your Distress Oxide. There we go. It looks a bit more aged now. It looks a bit more aged, which is what I quite like. And if you remember the technique from the previous demo with the camera where we used the beeswax, the vintage beeswax, that would look really good with the Honeybee as well. But I didn't want to do that today with the Honeybee because I've done that before on a Facebook Live. So I thought you could have a look at the camera demo in the previous show, and then you can look and maybe do that technique with the Honeybee as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the background stamp, and this time I'm going to take ground espresso, and I'm going to add some of this stamping from the background stamp on the Honeybee and add that to the background. It's a perfect background stamp. And this time I'm not using the wording at the moment, I'm just using the background element of the honeycomb. So I'm just using that, and it just gives a lovely touch of the background. It adds lovely layers to the background. So as you can see, what we can do now is bring in the circle and make sure that so that it's a cohesive design, you can add some of this same background to the circular piece. So make sure we've got that straight. So I'm just adding some darker stamping with the ground espresso over the top, just to give it another layer. So if I add a light layer like I have done with the vintage photo, and then the ground espresso on the top, you can still see that all those layers are visible. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is add this here, like so. So this will be like my vintage piece. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a piece of wood, because I think a piece of wood is quite natural. It's got a natural feel to it. So I think that'll work quite well with our piece. So what I'm going to do is apply the Distress Vintage Photo to my non-stick craft sheet, spritz with water, and then I'm going to mop up a little bit of that ink with my wood, which will be quite absorbent, but I want it to look just like that, just so it looks quite aged. It's got like a honey feel to it as well. Just dry my non-stick craft sheet just so that it's not quite as wet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this here, so we can adhere this now. We'll adhere this here. Just making sure that I've got exactly what I want. And what we're going to add to this is our lovely Honeybee. So just place that there. And I love adding layers to the design. I just think when you make it quite textural, it's lovely. I love adding the layers. So just make sure you've got these curved pieces, even though that piece will actually be slightly covered up. So what you need to do is tear a piece of this and then add a bit of Vintage Photo there. Just tear a bit of that page. So this is what we're aiming for. So what we can do now is we can stamp onto the wood. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use brown. I'm quite liking the brown tones. So I'm going to incorporate VersaFine Clair Acorn. And I'm going to take the background stamp from the Honeybee and I'm going to stamp the whole, well, most of it anyway, that will fit on there. And again, I'm not using an acrylic block, I'm using it as is because it gives me a more random stamping. And then I'm going to stamp straight onto my background of the wood. And it'll just give me a more random feel, as you can see. And I love that. Absolutely love it. The background stamp is so lovely. So just add a little bit more. There we go. And look, you've got a lovely piece of wood that coordinates perfectly with the project because you've got that natural element in there. And you've still got lots of layers that you've added as well. So just make sure that that's reasonably straight. And then what I'm going to do is take a spare piece of card. Spare piece of card so we can stamp our Honeybee. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swipe across the card very lightly with Fossilised Amber Distress Oxide. And then I'm going to take my Honeybee and stamp on top of the Distress Oxide. So stamp the Honeybee. And it's a lovely size bee. I love the size of it. So it can stand alone as a focal image. It looks beautiful. So just stamp our Honeybee in the background. And just look at the detail on that. I just think that is a lovely Honeybee. I think it's gorgeous. And I've already cut one out and I've already 3D'd the wings. Just so that you can see that. We've already 3D'd the wings. And what I'm thinking is I can add a little skeleton leaf on the top of my, I bet there's lots of us that have got skeleton leaves in our collection. So I'm just going to add the skeleton leaf, maybe try and get it the right way, Tracy. So I'm just going to add some adhesive, just a few dots down the centre of the skeleton leaf. And I'm going to add that to my project. And what's good about the skeleton leaf is, because it's translucent, you can still see the detail behind in that stamping. So I love that. And what I want to do is I always sort of mess around with the layout first. I always decide where I want it. And this is where the bee is going to go. So I'm going to adhere it there. Yes, I absolutely love it. So I'm going to adhere my piece of wood. And I'm just using my PVA glue to adhere the piece of wood because the piece of wood, the wood slice isn't heavy. So that's absolutely fine. It can take the weight because it's not too much weight for the glue. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my bee here. And I wanted to just make sure the top wings were a bit lighter in colour so they didn't dissolve into the background. So let's add a few cotton fibres as well. A few cotton fibres just to add a lovely texture in the background of the bee. So this is just your normal cotton thread. So I'm just adding a good thick layer of the cotton. And just spread that out a bit, bring it together, and then make sure you just adhere a little piece of that cotton, just so that it doesn't float around. Just make sure you adhere some of it with your PVA. Add a little touch of the glue to your bee, and then you can add that there, and you can just hold that down like so. Look how that bee is a good strong focal image. I just love how it's a good strong focal image, and it really does stand out, especially with having the white of the wings just to give some contrast. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some cream paint. So I'm going to add a few scratchy lines to my background just to bring in another texture, which I will lift up so that you can see, but this just adds another texture to my design. Sometimes you can't see it on camera until I lift it up. So I will lift this up so you can see this element in the design. So sometimes I get carried away and forget that I'm on camera and that I need to bring it in so you can see. So add a touch of that cream paint to the wood as well, just so we don't forget that wooden element, so it looks like it's part of the project. So we'll just wipe that up now. And then I can hold that up so you can see. We haven't quite finished yet. As you can see, you've got those cream elements of paint. You've got them here in the background, and here, and here, and on your wooden panel as well. So what I'm going to do now, just make sure my bee's straight, and then I'm going to add a touch of the calico. So what I want to do is bring in this background stamp again, but this time I'll just add it to an acrylic block just to give me some stability. So I'm just going to add that to an acrylic block, one of the All & Create acrylic blocks. And now we can stamp some of these words, and this time I'll stamp them in black. So I'm going to stamp the word pollen. So we can add the word pollen. Move these out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Nearly knocked my heat tool over then. So I'm just going to stamp the word pollen on there. So there's one. So this will add another textural element to my design. And I try and make it so all my projects sort of flow. So you can see the same elements throughout in the designs, but each one looks different. So I'm going to add the word pollen here. So add that, and I'm going to add another word as well. I'm not just going to leave it to the one word. So add pollen to our background, like so. And I love how all the elements are still visible. You can see all the textures below. Let's take another piece of the calico, and this time we'll add the word bee. That's what I like when you hide words inside the backgrounds, because you can use it as a background element, but you can also use it by using parts of the elements. So I do like it that you can break the stamp up a little bit. It really appeals to me. So I'm now going to add this bee here, and look how it adds that wonderful texture to your design. So add the bee element, and I love all those loose fibres because that gives me another texture as well. So add the bee here, like so. And then if we have a look at the stamp set, I can just bring the stamp set in. On the actual beehive, you can see it says bees and it says protect. So I'm going to use one of the words from there as well. So just because we've got a beehive doesn't mean I can't use a little bit of that text on the beehive. That's why I like stamps. They're so versatile. They're so versatile in how you can use them. And I'm going to use this and try and wing it without an acrylic block. And just add the Protect to my calico. And look at that. Look how it stamps on the fabric. Just perfect. I just love how it stamps. Just take this. We're going to tear. I always tear my calico because I like how it's an unneat. The edge is frayed. And it adds to that natural feel of everything that we're doing. So Protect, we're going to add here. I love adding these little touches. The little touches are what I spend most of my time doing. That and layering up the backgrounds. We all have our own style, and I just like to stick to what I enjoy. And adding layers and things is what I enjoy the most. And then what I've got is I've got a couple of these index clips, which I'm going to add to my design. And I'm going to add one here. I will add a touch of paint to these index clips, just so they feel part of the project. So I'm going to add an index clip there. Just think these little embellishments just finish it off nicely. And I'm going to add, and I always like to think about where I'm going to add my designs. So I'm going to add another index clip here, like so. There we go. Just add one more there. And we will add a touch of paint to that, because I think if you add a touch of paint, it looks like it belongs to the project. It looks like it's part of it. So just add a touch of paint. I pulled out way more paint than I needed, but there you go. But then that's given me an idea. I'm just going to add, oh yes, a little touches of the paint around the outside of the canvas piece. And it's funny how things just, as you're working and as you're creating, you feel more inspired to add a few more touches. I always feel inspired to add little touches, and I'm just adding touches of this paint around the outside of the circle with my finger, just to shabby it up a little bit. Oh yes, I like that. I've now lost my baby wipe. I'm trying to use it over and over again. Let me just chuck that in the bin. Just bring in this. And then what I've got is my lovely friend Anne, who's done some samples for me in the show. Hopefully, as I'm recording this, I'm hoping they will have arrived. But Anne, the lovely design team, have done some fantastic samples. So they really bring the samples to life. But my lovely friend Anne sent me this, a little bee charm, which I think is beautiful. So what I'm going to do is, we can colour that. We can colour that little charmed piece with some alcohol ink, just so that it's not quite as bright. It's perfect if you're using a colour scheme that needs a bright silver, but mine needs something a bit darker, and that's perfect. So I'm just using a ginger alcohol ink, just so it coordinates with the rest of my project. And then it's just deciding where I want this beautiful embellishment. And I'm probably going to add that here. I won't add it for now because I want the rest of it to dry. And if I bring in a circular canvas, this is my circular canvas. And if you add the circular canvas piece to your circular canvas and adhere it, you've got your project. And what we can do is we can add some lovely white splatters, because it's not a Tracy project unless you've got a few white splatters on your project. Just a few touches of white. Let's get that pen going a little bit, just so we can add some splatters. Hopefully the camera's not shaking too much, but what you can see is that you end up with a lovely layered piece. But that bee takes centre stage. But I love it with the wooden element and the fact that you've got that text in the background. You've got a little bit there that says protect. I just love the touches of calico. I really enjoyed making that. And really it was going with the flow and adding different bits each time. It's easier sometimes to get the camera angle, and other times not so easy. So I'm just trying to move it around a bit, not to make you dizzy, but just to show you all the detail in the canvas. I hope you enjoyed that demo, and I shall see you back again shortly. Bye.